Our Favorite Tools for Entrepreneurs podcast will address tools that are useful for startups and existing businesses. We will also cover other aspects of the launch and growth of entrepreneurial ventures. Your two hosts will be Professor Gary Palin and serial entrepreneur Ryan Budden. I am Professor Gary Palin.
Yeah, and I'm Ryan Budden.
This podcast is valuable to entrepreneurs in both launch and growth modes.
That's absolutely right. We'll go over some tools, get you into hyper-growth mode. How can we see some hockey stick growth in your business?
Well, hello, Ryan. How are you doing today?
Very well. What about you?
Oh, just keeping busy like always.
Heck yeah.
Hey, today I want to talk about the Pareto principle. So the first question that arises is, who the heck is Pareto and what does it have to do with entrepreneurship?
Exactly.
Vilfredo Pareto, in the late 1800s, an Italian economist, just made an observation that approximately 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the population. So the Pareto principle states that 80% of the results comes from 20% of the causes. It's also commonly known as the 80-20 rule. Some people refer to it as the law of the vital few, and it's also called the principle of factor sparsity. So I've used it many times in business. It's a continual application that can improve results for me. Have you ever used it, or do you have any examples of the Pareto principle, Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely. I think being aware of the principle is really important because it exists all around us. So just in everyday decisions, making sure that this is something in the back of your mind can really help manipulate where you're spending time, what you're looking for out of people and things. So in preparation for this, a funny 80-20 rule that I found was that 20% of the plants in the world contribute 80% of the fruit that we eat. So taking it a little bit outside of business, having a little bit of fun with it, but most of the statistics that you look are truly business related.
Yeah, and even though it's called a principle, it's really an observation. So it's not a hard, fast rule.
Right.
It's a rule of thumb to use. And as you said, it can be used in many applications. Like, for example, on a basketball team, 20% of the players will generate 80% of the points.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Have you, so any specific business applications you've used it with?
Yeah, so a big one for me is that prioritizing, knowing that 20% of your effort contributes 80% of the outcome, prioritizing what 20% of those tasks are, and then understanding that the rest of the 80% of the tasks on your plate can either be delegated or truly outsourced is a really amazing tactic, especially, in the inflection point of entrepreneurship when your life seems like it doesn't have enough minutes in a day.
Yeah, time is typically our enemy. So if you can maximize your output while minimizing the time input, it's definitely an important principle to understand. Way back in the dark ages, I purchased an office supply store, and minor little details like I knew nothing about office supplies, but it was a turnaround situation, and I wanted to improve the bottom line immediately. So I identified what were the 20% of the products in the store that generated 80% of the sales. And I immediately called the salespeople in and negotiated a better price for those 20%, like Post-it notes being one of those products as an example. And it immediately improved the bottom line.
Yeah. Another really big one for me that comes up a lot in everyday business when I'm consulting is that 20% of the customers buy 80% of your products. So customer retention is obviously a huge part of business. Well, instead of trying to focus on retaining 100% of your customers, having tools to identify the 20% that are contributing 80% and really focusing on those customers is super important.
Yeah, and you could do the same thing with your sales force. 20% of your sales force would generate 80% of your sales. So the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that those 20% have the resources and support they need. Now, that doesn't mean you ignore the other 80%, but once you've addressed the 20% that are generating most sales, then you could turn your efforts on the 80% and create improvements there. So you're getting benefits on both sides, but it's where you start your focus is the issue with the Pareto's principle.
Yeah. As we're talking about, startup businesses in particular, I think another really interesting one is that 20% of investors own 80% of companies. So when you're looking for revenue or an infusion of cash, understanding that the big 20% are really funding most startups.
Yeah, so there's multiple applications to this principle in areas, many areas beyond entrepreneurship, but our focus being entrepreneurship. And I've always found that it's always in the back of my mind, sometimes in the forefront of my mind, when I'm addressing the situation on where do I start, where do I focus?
Right. Yeah, I think, most good entrepreneurs do that daily, hyper focused on what tasks that they're knocking off the list and prioritizing that 20%.
Excellent. Well, as we wrap up, any quick thoughts that you want to add to the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule?
No, I would just say that it's, not a hard, fast law in life, but understanding the basics of it and helping that inform your decisions that you make can really help streamline your day to day.
Sounds great. Well, thanks, Ryan. You have a great day.
You as well.
Thanks for listening to our Favorite Tools for Entrepreneurs podcast with Professor Gary Palin and Ryan Budden. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into topics that assist with the launch and growth of your entrepreneurial venture. As always, you can head over to ProfSpirit.com to check out more resources and courses designed for you, the entrepreneur. Also, please follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or YouTube to get the most up-to-date information as it is released.